Hey, I'm Singh, and today we're going to be looking at the Tracer 900 in our Tall Rider reviews. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, as always, this is not your traditional review. We are not going to talk about specs or how it rides or top speed. This review series and most of my content moving forward will be designated to tall riders and their comfort on the motorcycle and related items like gear, etc. Let's get into it. Let's start with my dimensions. I'm still 6'5", although 198 pounds. And yes, I gained a little bit of weight in quarantine, as probably most of us. Still with an inseam of 34. I wear 34 in jeans, Levi's, for example. In terms of my arms, I wear sleeve size 36. And my shoes, I wear size 13. So hopefully that gives you enough information to compare yourself to my size. With that out of the way, let's jump into the review. So overall, in my opinion, the Tracer 900 is a great fit for tall riders. However, there are a few things we need to consider, which we'll get into shortly. So why don't we start from the top? When you watch other reviews of this motorcycle, which I assume you already have, the first thing everyone complains about is the stock windscreen and buffeting that it causes. Well, the good news is that is not an issue for us tall riders. It actually pushes the wind perfectly right on my chest, leaving my helmet in clean air. Of course, if you want more wind protection, then you can upgrade to a touring screen, and unfortunately, that's where I have some bad news. I have ridden the motorcycle with the Puig touring screen, and as I expected, it does not work for us tall riders. With the touring screen, the wind hits directly on my helmet and it causes unbearable buffeting, and it actually gave me a severe headache. And it didn't matter where I adjusted the screen because, as you guys know, the Tracer has about, I would say, 2 inches worth of adjustability up or down, and it didn't matter. So you'll definitely need to buy a wind deflector, although not much money, but take that cost into consideration when you're buying a touring screen. And again, I've only tried the Puig, so I haven't tried any of the other offerings for this Tracer 900. Now, the reach to the bars, it's surprisingly so far away. I mean, I don't know how short riders with shorter arms even find this bike comfortable. When I sit up straight, my arms are almost straight. It's got a very slight bend. Unfortunately, in the jacket, you can't really see my arms that well, but you can still see there's a very, very little bend, and they're almost straight. I've actually done a 6-hour ride on this Tracer, and man, my shoulders were shot after that ride. I would definitely not only add risers for these bars, but also move them back. I know they sell an adapter for these Tracers, which go up about an inch and also moves back about, I think, 3/4 of an inch. That might be enough, but I think we might need a little bit more, closer to an inch. The bike is, of course, not meant to go off-road. It's got street tires and rims, but I wouldn't mind exploring some fire roads. The chassis is super balanced. I mean, we're very familiar with this chassis and engine from the MT09 and the XSR 900, and it can totally handle some mild off-road. But again, for that, I would need risers. And as you can see in these pictures, I wouldn't be very comfortable standing in this position for too long. Otherwise, the clutch lever, it's not adjustable, but I think it's got a nice natural positioning. I didn't have any problems finding it. The brake lever on the other side is adjustable, so you can adjust that to your liking as you will. Let's now work our way down to the legs. This is kind of where we have major issues, unfortunately. Let's start with the biggest, the rear sets. In my opinion, they are far too back and low. Obviously, like I mentioned, this is, it's got a similar chassis and engine as the MT09 and the XSR 900. So it's got that leg position and the position of the rear set, exactly from the MT09. Which is a bit awkward on this bike. You're meant to just sit back and enjoy the long rides, etc. But it doesn't work for this because it's meant to have 2 up. It's meant to be ridden with the passenger. When Yamaha refreshed this motorcycle in 2018, they lowered the passenger pegs, which was an excellent idea. Now it offers much more legroom and it's a lot more comfortable for the passenger. My wife has actually ridden on the back of this one, so if you guys are interested on hearing her thoughts and how she felt on this bike, compared to some of the other ones that she's ridden with me, let me know in the comment section, and I'll try to convince her for an interview on this channel. So let me know in the comment section. So lowering these pegs, have caused a major issue. As you can see, when I pull my toes back on the rear set, I constantly hit the passenger pegs. And, I ride in this position 80% of the time, unless, I'm just sitting on the highway on a long stretch. It isn't a huge deal when you're casually riding because, I can put my heel at the passenger foot pegs, and it's, you got yourself a nice little resting spot. Or you can, as always, just kind of move your foot back towards the shift lever and the brake lever. That way your foot is kind of in the middle of the rear set, and that's okay as well. However, when I am leaning off the bike and switching back and forth, it does get annoying very quickly. My foot is constantly coming in contact with the passenger peg, and while you're focusing on the turns, you obviously don't want that in the back of your mind, thinking about avoiding that, etc. So it's a bit annoying when you are hitting it hard. In my opinion, the rear sets need to be an inch forward and up. That will improve the hip angle as well, because again, this is coming directly from the FJ09, and it's just a weird, upper body to lower body angle. So your hips are opened up a bit and back. So I think it would improve the hip angle. And if the rear sets move up a little bit while moved forward, we will also fit the tank a little bit better. As you can see, my knees are kind of falling under onto the plastic parts. And that's okay. That's where you can maybe apply some grip tape or whatever, and you can, grip onto the tank. But I think if we can move it up about an inch, that will give us a nice little squeezable tank pads there. So moving on to the next issue with the lower legs, I would also not recommend getting crash protections that uses the middle mount. There isn't a ton of space between your knee and the mid mount. I would suspect, as I experienced on the XSR 900, my knees would bang into the crash bars or sliders that are using the mid mount. Unfortunate, because GV or however you pronounce that, and SW Motec makes some killer crash bars for this motorcycle. And that's just a bummer, and I think they look great as well on the bike. But if it's, and they all kind of use the mid mount, and, I would caution you guys getting those. If you want to try them out, sure. But in my opinion, I think it would be an issue. I've got some good news though. Well, maybe not news at all, because of course there is no issue flat footing this bike at all. Even on the center stand or off the center stand, we got plenty of reach down to the ground. So no issues there. I think that about wraps up the video. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think overall this bike is a great fit for us tall riders. With some minor adjustments that are pretty inexpensive as well, we can make this bike super, super comfortable for long stretches and still be able to hit some twisties and some aggressive riding. Since, again, this is, sharing that chassis and engine from FJ09, and this engine is just brilliant, and this chassis is so balanced, it can totally rip up some canyons. So no doubt about that. And it's tall, height, adjustable seating position. It can go up about an inch, and that's where I had this adjusted for this entire video of these pictures, and it's just perfect, and it gives you a good amount of legroom. Even if you don't want to change the rear sets and the rear passenger foot pegs aren't bothering you, you can leave that as is, and you can be so comfortable this whole time of your riding experience with this motorcycle. So excellent fit. But as always, please leave your questions in the comment section below. I always get back to every comment and question on my video, so don't hesitate. If you have a question, leave them down below. If you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and liking, and that just helps the channel out and gets this video to other viewers that might find this video helpful. As always, have a safe ride, and I'll see you guys in the next one.